It's now my honor to invite Howard Milstein and Polly Trottenberg onto the stage. Howard is the chairman, president, and CEO of New York Private Bank and Trust. Howard is a dedicated New Yorker, supporting countless New York institutions. He previously served as our state as chairman of the New York State Thruway Authority. He also was a close friend and colleague of John Zuccotti, and he joins us annually to present this award in John's name. Meanwhile, we're really thrilled to have Polly Trottenberg, Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Transportation, serving for President Joe Biden. Polly previously served as New York City's Transportation Commissioner, where among her very many achievements, she really oversaw the rapid transformation of New York streets for all New Yorkers to enjoy outdoor space during the height of COVID-19. She knows today's honoree also extremely well, since when I first met Polly, she was working for Senator Schumer after having worked for his predecessor, Daniel Patrick Moynihan. So please join me in welcoming Howard Milstein and Polly Trottenberg to the stage.
Thank you, Tom. It's been 7 years since we lost John Zuccotti. Many of you knew him as a longtime member of RPA's board and executive committee. For me, he was a guiding light, a dear friend, mentor, advisor, and colleague. And so I'm pleased that his wife, Susan, is here with us today. Susan? John's New York Times memoriam described him as a street smart urbanist who was an unsung hero. Each year we make a small dent in the unsung part and honor his legacy by presenting RPA's prestigious John Zuccotti Lifetime Achievement Award. This year the award goes to another street smart urbanist, Senator Chuck Schumer. This past year, a landmark infrastructure bill shepherded through the Senate by Senator Schumer is going to make many of John's dreams for our region a reality. Foremost among these, the Gateway program, which will revitalize the busiest stretch of the Northeast Corridor. As long ago as 1976, John helped bring to life an earlier visionary Gateway project. As chair of the New York City Department of Planning, he campaigned and lobbied hard to secure funds for Gateway National Recreation Area, the first urban national park in the country. It was a period of high unemployment, and many people couldn't afford to leave the city to enjoy nature. Gateway Recreation Area, with its beaches and fields, was a gift to them and the entire city. John gave us other gifts as well. Through his career, John was an indispensable leader in the growth and development of the region. He chaired the Real Estate Board of New York. He guided RPA's work in adding train access to Newark Airport, promoting redevelopment and public sector improvements around gateway communities, and perhaps most important, investing in trans-Hudson connections. In the public sector and then in the private sector, John became one of the builders of New York and one of its leading rebuilders after 9/11. That's a good segue to today's honoree, because Chuck Schumer, even all these years after 9/11, has continued to press for health care funding for its victims. In giving its own award to Senator Schumer, the Real Estate Board of New York said, "It's not an oversight to say that today's New York City skyline looks the way it does, thanks in part to Senator Schumer." But more to the point, for the RPA is his unwavering commitment to the repair of our aging infrastructure. That means fixing, replacing, and modernizing roads and bridges, public transportation systems, water and sewer systems, ports, airports, and waterways, and the energy grid. Nobody better understands our regional infrastructure needs, and no one has fought harder and more tenaciously to get them met than Senator Schumer. Even through the pandemic, Chuck secured $16 billion for the MTA through COVID relief bills and another $11 billion in formula funds allocated by Congress. No doubt there will be more funds for the MTA coming from the infrastructure bill's other projects. Polly?
Thank you, Howard, and thank you for all your leadership. Thank you for Tom and for Scott for letting me be part of this wonderful centennial event, and thanks for all incredible work that you all do. I see a lot of friends and colleagues here. It's great to see you all. The RPA asked me to come speak personally today, so I have the privilege of speaking from the heart about Senator Charles Schumer, known as Chuck to everyone. I got to serve as his legislative director in the Senate and then have worked with him in so many other capacities for nearly a quarter of a century, so no pressure today. I stand before you as Tom mentioned, a rare creature, a staffer who managed to work for both the late legendary Daniel Patrick Moynihan, and then I got to work for Chuck. So I need to take you all back a bit in the mists of time, the olden days, the 1990s, when I worked for Senator Moynihan. My days were filled with rich discussions of history, public policy debates. I wrote beautiful, elegant memos with nuanced arguments and wry literary allusions. You all would have loved my memos. There were long lunches with French delicacies and fine wines, great wines that the congressional staffers couldn't ordinarily afford. And then when August recess rolled around, Senator Moynihan would bid us all a fond farewell and head up to Pinder's Corners, and we would see him again after Labor Day. Well, I will admit, when I went to go work for Chuck back in 1999 as a brand new freshman senator, I did not really have a clue of what I was signing up for. It took me about a week to realize there were going to be no leisurely wine-filled lunches, no quiet August recesses, in fact, no quiet days ever. But, wow, I realized we would be accomplishing amazing things. And I realized that Chuck perhaps would not have the time for long, erudite discussions about history. We would instead be making it. I realized Chuck was going to be an incredible leader and visionary on transportation, on city planning. You heard some of that from Howard today. But transportation near and dear to my heart for both New York and the country. He brought his experience as a proud, lifelong Brooklynite and as the senator who visited all 62 counties of New York State every year. And by the way, that was my idea, Chuck. I just want you to know that. He brought that to the Senate, to fighting fiercely, as you've heard today, for things like transit and Amtrak at a time when they were under relentless political assault. So over the years, I've gotten to work for a number of elected officials, and I've had the chance to reflect on my time with Chuck and what I treasured most about the experience, because sometimes, and this may surprise some of you, it was not always a walk in the park. So a few things come to mind. First, as a congressional staffer, you want to have a boss who listens to you, who respects you enough to seriously consider your views. Now with Chuck, that process could go on all night, night after night, but at least at the end of that time, you knew you'd had the space and the opportunity to put forth your best opinions and advice. Now, I certainly didn't win every argument with Chuck. Nobody does. I mean, except, of course, Iris. But I won enough of them to feel like I had done my job and I had helped him do his. And that, I have to say, has been the hallmark of Chuck's leadership style, with his Senate staff and with his Democratic colleagues in the Senate. They know he listens to them, he truly engages, and he respects their opinions. Be they a staffer, be they Elizabeth Warren, be they Joe Manchin, whoever it may be. Second, Chuck is a doer, as this audience know well. He pushed to accomplish things in a way that I had never seen before. He simply never took no for an answer from anyone ever. And if anyone in this room has ever had the Chuck Schumer treatment, you know what I mean. And as a result, I have to say, I learned to be a much better staffer and leader myself, although perhaps in a slightly gentler way. On transportation, Chuck was also relentless, getting new airline service for upstate, bringing in billions of dollars to help New York's roads and bridges and transit systems, and of course, as you've heard, helping New York chart a new future and rebuild after 9/11. And with a lot of help from the RPA, I might add. He fought for projects across the state, and many here in New York that we all know and love. The Moynihan Train Hall, Fulton Street Station, 2nd Avenue Subway, East River Tunnels, Penn Access, our airports, and of course, Gateway. And I do have to just say, it was thrilling to hear the two governors today announce the appointment of Chris Kaluri. And I can tell you from the US DOT point of view, we are very excited to work with Chris and keep that project rolling. But I would say now, even with everything that Chuck has on his plate as Senate Majority Leader, he continues to focus on transportation. We at USDOT hear from him regularly, and as Howard described, he's brought in billions of dollars of relief funds from COVID to help save the MTA and New Jersey Transit and other regional transit systems, and of course, helped shepherd through the Senate the historic bipartisan infrastructure bill that is going to transform this region and so many other parts of the country, and that I now have the privilege of implementing at USDOT. So I will say for me, probably the third and final thing that I treasured the most about working for Chuck was the incredible people he hired. The Schumer Alumni Network is extraordinary and accomplished. They are forged in fire, and I'm so grateful to have known and worked with so many of them, and I know a bunch of them are here today. They have been so instrumental in Chuck's success, and I know many of you know some of them who've been with Chuck for a long time, Mike Lynch and Martin Brennan and so many others. And I will tell Carol Kellerman, who was on Chuck's staff, but is also, of course, friend and family as well. She falls into all categories. And I do want to talk for a minute about Chuck's beloved family. First of all, Iris, my path-breaking predecessor at New York City DOT, whose footsteps I literally got to walk in and got to learn so much from. Their beloved daughters, Allie and Jessie, who I got to see grow up, and now their spouses, Elizabeth and Michael. Michael is now my brilliant colleague at USDOT. And I know, of course, there is the grandson, Noah. Wow, is he cute. And of course, Mazel Tov, there is another one on the way. Getting to work for Chuck Schumer certainly changed my life, and getting to see him in action, up close, in both New York and Washington, be he on the Senate floor or be he riding his bike around Prospect Park, it's never ceased to make me proud. And I know I speak for everyone who has ever worked for Chuck when I say we are so thrilled that you are being honored today. We are grateful for your incredible leadership, your service to New York and to our nation, especially in these tumultuous times. So thank you, Chuck. We love you. Back to you, Howard.
Thanks, Polly. Chuck has been our outstanding senior senator since 1999, and we're proud that he now serves as Senate Majority Leader. Today, we're honored to recognize his many accomplishments and years of service with RPA's highest honor, bestowing the John Zuccotti Lifetime Achievement Award to my dear friend, Chuck Schumer.
This is a map from 1929 of the region, from the original regional plan of New York and its environs. Wow. That's beautiful. Thank you, Senator.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Scott, and of course, my dear and longtime friend Howard Milstein, our great chair, and the wonderful Polly Trottenberg. I'm going to tell a story about her in a minute. But it is so, so good to be here. I thought I'd tell two little stories, not in the script, that reminded me. First, Polly mentioned Noah, our great-grandson, our wonderful grandson, not a great-grandson. So the other day, Iris said to him, Noah, you're so cute, I could bite your butt. And Noah says, Mom, Grandma, Noah's not food. And the second one relates to the 62-county tour, which Polly mentioned. So we originated this because when I was running against Senator Moynihan, he said that, oh, if you elect Schumer in upstate, playing on the upstate-downstate division, if you elect Schumer, you'll never see him west of the Hudson. And so I said, well, if I win, God willing, I'll visit every county my first year. I won. I visited every county. I've loved it so much, I've done it every year since. Well, it really worked. So now it's the day after my first re-election in 2004. We had gotten 71% of the vote, and we carried 61 of the 62 counties. The only county we didn't carry was Hamilton County. For those of you who know your New York geography, Hamilton County is beautiful in the middle of the Adirondacks, great mountains and rivers, great hunting and fishing and hiking. But it's our smallest county. It only has 5,000 people. So I was sort of bragging And as Polly mentioned, I've been blessed with a great staff through the years. Just amazing. And I'm talking to Martin Brennan. Both Martin Brennan and Mike Lynch have been with me since I started, my chief in Washington and my chief in New York, two tough Irish guys who keep me in line. Anyway, so I'm sort of bragging, and I'm saying to Martin, so Martin, why do you think we carried every county but Hamilton County? Why do you think we lost Hamilton County? He said, it's simple, Chuck. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, you visited it 6 times as your promise to visit every county every year. I said, yeah, that's true. And he said, and it's our smallest county. It only has 5,000 people. I said, yeah, that's true. He said, it's obvious. It's the only county where you actually met every single voter. Anyway, it is great to be here today, filled with so many amazing civic leaders who care so deeply about the future of the city I just love. I just love New York. It's totally in my bones, every corner of it, every piece of it. And I understand the only thing standing between you and the open bar is me, so I'll be brief. Not always my strong suit, I warn you. First, I want to say that over the last 100 years, this region has transformed dramatically. And it's so critical we have a smart and capable group like the RPA thinking about how to address the challenges of growth and sustainability, and particularly thinking in the long term, because our society is plagued by so much short-termism. The fact that this group has the breathing room, the intelligence, the strength to think of what we need 10 and 15 and 20 years from now and put it forward is just amazing and amazingly helpful. I also want to acknowledge Susan Zuccotti, John's wife. I didn't see her. Is she here? Hi, Susan. So, John Zuccotti was an amazing man and something of a mentor to me. Like everyone else in this room who knew him, we loved him. Just a fine human being. Just a fine, fine person. I first met him back in the 70s. I was a brand new state assemblyman, 23 years old, 1975, in the New York State Assembly, and John had just been appointed first deputy mayor under then Mayor Abe Beame. Everyone heard of Abe Beame? You know, you feel a little old sometimes. I spoke to the Young Democrats, the Manhattan Young Democrats, a few months ago, and I mentioned Bella Abzug, and not one of them had ever heard of him. So I'm glad this room has a little more historical memory. Anyway, that was during the years of the 70s, when confidence in the city's future was at an all-time low. Member Gerald Ford told New York City, drop dead. The city was really hurting. It was an inflection point in our history, one that had the echoes of the crises of the past few years. No guarantee that New York would survive our fiscal insolvency. But there was John Zuccotti. He ran the city, which people had lost faith in, and he helped put together a plan to save New York with people like Howard Rubenstein and Lou Rudin and Bob Tisch. And as a result, New York City didn't just survive, but it went on to expand and ultimately flourish and continue as the international hub, the greatest city in the world, the hub of culture and commerce we know today. Without John, this wouldn't have happened. So his legacy lives on in his vitality and resiliency, in the vitality and resiliency of this city. So it's truly humbling to me, who knew him, loved him, so admired him, to receive this award in his honor. So thank you very much for that. Now, one other point I'd make a little personal, since it's become family. My father passed away a few months ago in November. And he didn't get many breaks in life. He had this junky little exterminating business that he hated. And he worked so hard to help his family. Never complained. He was a brilliant man, but circumstances never let him go to college. And he never even resented people who were given better breaks than him. But for those of you who've lost parents you've been close to, you know that even when they're gone, he passed away in November, they're still here. My dad is still next to me. He's right here. And he taught me 2 values that have motivated me for my entire life. One, always help people. That's the noblest thing you can do. And second, if you do the right thing and persist, God will reward you. Those are the values that have motivated me throughout my career. And Susan, I'm sure you feel that John is still with you and hovering over you and giving you guidance in the same way my dad is still with me. And so that's really what carried me through. It got me to decide to run for the Assembly at age 23, and I started putting up campaign flyers on Ocean Avenue and Sheepshead Bay all by myself. I had no staff at the beginning. That being said, my mom and dad didn't much like it when I told them I was quitting the fancy law firm that paid $400 a week in the Assembly, more money than my family had ever seen and run for the Assembly. But there were so many problems, and people needed help, struggling, middle-class, working-class people who just needed certain kinds of help, and I wanted to be there and wanted to do it. And without the kind of motivation that my father gave me, I don't know if I would have been there. And obviously, I've climbed the ladder. The problems are bigger. They're more existential. But my passion and commitment to just helping people, everyday folks, is stronger than ever. Now, let me tell you a little about Senator Moynihan, who hovers over us as well. And this is a story that Polly knows, but not many others. So Senator Moynihan backed me when I ran for the Senate in 1998. It was not easy for him because he got along with Senator D'Amato, but he backed me. And I remember the last week of the campaign, we took a bus tour. Iris was there. That went from Buffalo to Rochester to Syracuse to Albany. In his back, he had a World War II injury that had always hurt him in his back, but he went through the whole trip with me. And then we won. And so 2 days later, Senator Moynihan called me and said, please come to my office over in the Federal Building. And he said, I'm going to tell you two things. I'm going to do two things, he said. One, he said, you're the second to know after Liz, his wife, that I'm going to announce in a week that I am not running again for the Senate in my term in 2000. He said, now that you're here, you can carry on my legacy. I know it will be carried on. And the two places he most focused on were, one, helping New York's great hospital system, as he called them, the greatest hospital system in the world, and second, prioritizing New York's transit system, both public and private, and make sure that New York got what it needed. And those have stayed with me. So that's the first thing. He said, here's my legacy, here's the torch, carry it on. And then he said something else, and I'll say this in Moynihanese. He said, I'm going to give you a gift. Polly Trottenberg. He explained to me that she had done transportation work for him, that she had done it so well that he wanted to make sure that I hired her and continued on. And not only did she do a great job on the transportation side, but she became my legislative director and then has moved on to bigger and better things. So to Pat Moynihan, thank you for all you've done. Thank you for Polly Trottenberg. And to Pat Moynihan, I am trying to continue to do what you have asked me to do and deliver for New York. As you know, I've always fought so hard for this city, but never as hard as when there are crises. After the Twin Towers fell, as many of you know, I sort of shamed George Bush into giving us $20 billion. That's another good story. We go up there. I like to tell stories. Sorry, open bar. President Bush sent Hillary and I, she was senator as well. We saw the devastation in New York. We saw how horrible it was. We met with the mayor and governor, asked the price of the damage. Next day, George Bush has us in his office, and he asked me as the senior senator from New York with the two Virginia senators, because the Pentagon had been hit, to tell him what happened. I did. And then I decided to surprise him, and I said at the end, and that's why, Mr. President, you've said you want $20 billion from the Congress for the country, but New York needs $20 billion in addition on its own. And I thought he'd say, okay, I'll get back to you or give me a list. He said, New York, the damage is $20 billion? I said, more, Mr. President. He said, you got it. And the jaws of his staff collectively dropped. I then went outside. We had the press. And I said, and guess what, everybody, with Bush standing next to me. George Bush has promised New York $20 billion. He smiled wanly, but to his credit, it took 5-6 years to get that money. He never backed off. He never backed off once, even though many of his more conservative folks wanted him to. So after Superstorm Sandy, with RPA's great help, we focused and got $60 billion for New York and focused on resiliency, which was so important. And there's still some building going on right now in New York, still from the Sandy money, as Polly is nodding her head. But it's all resilient, and it'll all, God forbid we have another Sandy, it will be able to withstand them. Probably no greater place where I was able to fulfill the senator's mission to me was after COVID. By then I was minority leader and then later majority leader, which gave you some real clout. And we brought over $250 billion to New York. Our hospitals, our major hospitals, were ready to go bankrupt. New York's health and hospital system received over $1.2 billion. New York Presbyterian, $1 billion. Langone, $435 million. Mount Sinai, $375. And our transportation system, between all the bills we've done, has never had more money than now. First, of course, to keep our subways going, and then provide new money for our subways and our buses and our transit system, over $16 billion. That's going to allow us to expand in things like the 2nd Avenue subway, the transformation of Penn Station, the construction of Metro North stations in the Bronx. And same, the bipartisan infrastructure bill is going to deliver more money for our roads, our highways, our traditional infrastructure than New York has ever had. So, Senator Moynihan, I want to tell you this. You always decried, Pat Moynihan always decried the fact that New York is a donor nation, donor state, that we give back more to Washington, we give more to Washington than we get back. But now that we have a majority leader, it's the first year we are not a donor state. For every dollar we gave to New York, Washington last year, we got $1.59 back. So it's great. Finally, I'd like to talk to you about something that's passionate with me, and I know both governors talked about it here earlier today, and that is Gateway. We have so much more to do, but at the top of my list is Gateway, the most important infrastructure project in the nation. As you all know, President Trump cynically held the project hostage for 4 years. But I was still able, during that time, to plus up infrastructure and transit accounts with billions of dollars to support Gateway once the political and bureaucratic hurdles were cleared. Shortly after Pete Buttigieg became secretary and Polly deputy, we brought the secretary to New York to see the state of the tunnels firsthand. Governor Murphy was with me, and to his credit, he committed to do everything in his power to support the project's advancement. I had proposed originally the Gateway Group, governors from New York and New Jersey, Tony Kosha, who does a great job, and we just got reappointed as chairman of Amtrak and is always looking out for New York, and the Federal Transportation Secretary. It took a while to get 2 states to get involved in those days. Christie wasn't that hot on Gateway, as you know, and Governor Cuomo had a lot of other projects in mind, but now we're there, and today's appointment is a great, great announcement to help us move forward in that regard. And what I'd like to do is outline a basic action plan of how we get Gateway moving. There are 3 pieces. First, the new Gateway Development Corporation, as I mentioned, which I had to struggle for about 6 months to a year to put together and get everyone to agree. But now we need to get it funded, staffed, and set up as a grant-eligible project sponsor. Today's announcement of the executive director is a step in the right direction. I really want to thank Governors Hochul and Murphy for focusing on it, but the states, the Port Authority, and Amtrak need to do more to stand up the GDC. We must do it quickly. And I know we have our Port Authority and our Amtrak and our state folks here, so we got to all pull together and get this done quickly. Second, New York and New Jersey each need to set aside their differences and sign MOUs about how they will fund their shares of the project. The agreement we came to when I pulled this together was 50 federal, 50 state, or 50 federal, 25 New York, 25 New Jersey. And third, the FRA, Federal Railroad Administration, should commit to voting a good part of the $24 billion in the Federal State Partnership Northeast Corridor funds, which I fought for to get into the BIF, towards Gateway. When the original funding agreements were hammered out in concept, nobody knew that a historic infrastructure bill might pass into law. Now that it is law, my commitment, I've asked the states for something, I've asked Amtrak and Port for something, my commitment is I will use my clout as majority leader and push my friends at DOT and FRA to commit to using the federal-state partnership account's historical levels of funding to further support Gateway, by far the most important project on the new Northeast Corridor. And what should that do? The governors have both left, but they'll be happy to hear this. It will have the net effect of lowering New York and New Jersey's funding obligations for the project at a time when controlling costs and managing fiscal health is more urgent than ever in the wake of COVID. As I've said many times to podiums all around this city, all over DC, and throughout the country, Gateway is a project of national importance. If we don't have Gateway, the Northeast Corridor would go into recession, and we're 25% of the economy. It would affect the whole country. So Gateway is important to every American, and we're going to get this done. I am putting my full passion and energy and all those midnight phone calls into making sure that Gateway happens. So, in conclusion, if Moynihan were looking down from heaven right now, and I hope he is, I know what he'd say: get Gateway done. It is the collective responsibility of everyone in this room, our federal partners, the states, the transit advocacy groups, all the local shareholders, to set aside our differences and get this done. So let's not bicker over a million little things, a million different alignments, a million little questions. The bottom line is that these tunnels, we all know, will fail eventually if nothing is done. So when it comes to Gateway, if not now, then when? If not us, then who? We're in the midst of what I believe is a transformational moment for New York. We're growing. By the way, don't let any of these naysayers decry New York. People forget this, and I was really upset that the New York Times hardly wrote about this. But New York had 8.1 million people in 2010 census and 8.8 million people, a little more than 8.8, in the 2020 census. We gained more people absolutely than any city in the country, and on a per capita basis, we were fourth, ahead of cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco and Boston and Miami and Chicago. New York will always be the greatest city in the world, and everyone's going to want to be here. So now is the moment to get Gateway done. I thank you for this honor. I will do everything I can to be worthy of the legacy of John Zuccotti and Pat Moynihan. Thank you, RPA. Go to the bar and toast New York, everybody. Go to the bar and toast New York.